And then God transitions from the commands of upholding these successions of virtues, to then staying away from these three pillars of evil that corrode the very essence of society. These three, and I'll get to them momentarily, these three things that God is telling us, when you indulge in them, when you do them, when you allow yourself to submit to them, you will corrode justice. You will eliminate ihsan, excellence and beauty, and you will destroy the family. God begins by saying, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ. He begins by saying, I prohibit you and I command you to stay away from fahsha. And fahsha is everything that is obscene, everything that is lewd. And in the Quran, fahsha is synonymous with zina, with fornication. Because behind fornication, behind the willingness or the allowance to allow my sexual exploits to be unrestricted, that I please myself sexually in any way that I want, in any manifestation of that, behind all of that is a very big injustice. And that is that I am surrendering myself to my base desires. And that is one of the greatest forms of injustice that we do to ourselves. That I'm saying to myself, I have these pleasures, I have these wants, I have these desires, I have these inclinations, I'm going to fulfill them as I please. And that obviously, number one, that destroys the family, because the family is a unit that when preserved, values are preserved. The values of selflessness and justice, and the values of caring, and the values of empathy and mercy, and so many essential values. And the identity of individuals are preserved. Children know who their parents are, where they come from. That's what happens when you preserve these institutions. But when you destroy these institutions, when you harm these institutions, and you surrender to your base desires, it becomes chaos. It becomes chaos. And so you can see that what God is calling us to is not just justice. He wants us now higher call after higher call. Ihsan. And then He wants us to stay away from obscenities and lewdness, to not indulge our base bestial desires. The irascible self or the irascible soul. No, control yourself. You're better than that. You can, like we said in the last sermon, you can allow your higher self to control your lower self. You're a person, God created you with an intellect, with a mind. You have a soul, you have a heart. You control your lower self. Don't indulge in those vices, because if you allow for fahisha, lewdness and obscenity to spread, then you will corrode goodness and wellness in society. You will break social harmony and social well-being. And coupled with that is munkar, evil, vice, sin. Munkar is everything that God has deemed as being ugly and sinful. Stealing, cheating, killing, murdering, pillaging, raping. Right? So much of the pain that exists in our world today, whether it is between nation states or between family members or community members, is rooted in us indulging our base desires. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 1400 years ago, He said, don't preserve yourself. Preserve your private parts. Don't indulge your sexual desires. Don't liberate your sexual desires. Restrict your sexual desires. Funnel them in a meaningful direction. That's why He says, إِلَّا عَلَى أَزْوَاجِهِمْ, except upon your spouses. Except upon those that it is halal to have those relationships with. That is the only place where there is beauty in that relationship, where the farj, where the private part is concerned. But anything else, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes them as al-aadun, the transgressors. That if you use or engage or think or indulge your private parts outside of that which is halal, you have transgressed and you have wronged yourself. And so much of the pain that we're struggling with today is because of an indulgence of the nafs and the shahwa. An absolute indulgence of the desire and the bestial desire without any restriction. Don't question. Whatever you want, have it. It's yours. That's why the rates of watching pornography are through the roof. Why? Why is that the case? Because the notion is, don't restrict yourself. Indulge what you want. But is that in line with وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ? And the term farj is indicative of that, of the entire apparatus of shahwa, of desire. And hifadh, the word yuhafidhun, is to say to you that this is something that you preserve, you care for, you're worried about, you protect. You don't just do whatever it wants. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us what we need, brothers and sisters. Wallahi al-azim, He's telling us verbatim, if you want to succeed in this life and the next, and you want to live a good life in this one and the next, then listen to what I'm telling you. Because these other notions of do whatever you want, whenever you want, indulge in any sexual relationship you want, your flags should immediately be raised up. Question marks should immediately be thrown up, because who is telling you this and why? Desire is something that you have to control and condition, because never should you allow your lower self to dominate your higher self. And that's in the language of philosophy, the higher self is the aql, the intellect, and the lower self is the base bestial desires. But today, society is telling us somehow that what is good for us is that the lower self is what dictates, and the higher self, the aql, as Allah describes in the Quran, the nur, the aql, one way the aql is described is as being a source of light. Imam al-Razi says, nurun ala nur is the light of the aql upon the light of revelation. We're being told, no, succumb, allow the higher self to succumb to the lower self. That is not the way of La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. That is not in the spirit, in the moral, ethical paradigm of our religion that says, no, we are a people who honor our minds, these gifts from God. We honor our souls and our hearts, and we will not be controlled by our lower self. Rather, we will control the lower self. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ. Except, Allah says, illa, except where it is halal.
And thank you very much, and God bless.